In this lesson, you'll learn about changing some old reading habits. We'll discuss 3 reading habits that hold back most people from making improvements in their reading speed. The first old reading habit is called fixation. Fixation is basically something that your eyes do as you're reading. They fixate on each and every single word. Now, the simple problem with this is that you're not using your full peripheral vision. You can see more than one word at a time, so why shouldn't you be able to read more than one word at a time? And it is possible to read groups of words. But when most people read, they like to fixate on each and every single word. Even though we have peripheral vision, when we read, most people, they kind of read with tunnel vision. So we need to change this old reading habit of fixation, and we need to learn how to open up our peripheral vision so we can read groups of words rather than word by word. The next old reading habit is called regression. Regression is something that everybody's done at one point or another. I'm sure you've gone back to reread material before. And some people do this excessively. The average person goes back to reread material 33% of the time. So this means if you take 60 minutes of reading, the average reader is going back to reread during 20 of those 60 minutes. So that means that reader has only read for 40 minutes going forward. One of the main reasons why most people go back to reread material is because their brain wanders off, or they didn't understand what they just read. And that's fine. It's a good idea to go back and reread something when you didn't understand what you just read, but sometimes we make pointless regressions. An example of a pointless regression, and everybody's done this before, sometimes you read a sentence and it's just not hitting you. Maybe you read that sentence and then you reread it again, and for some reason it's just not hitting you. Now the problem with doing this, rereading just one sentence, is that first of all, that sentence might just not be clearly written. That's one possibility. The other possibility is that sentence isn't giving you the main idea just yet. Sometimes the main idea follows later on in the paragraph, so you won't understand that first sentence until you've read the entire paragraph. Think about when you're watching a movie on DVD. You ever watch a movie that opens up and it's a little confusing at the beginning, but you're not supposed to know what's really going on until maybe the middle or later on in that scene? Nobody really stops the DVD at that point and says, hold on, let's rewatch that scene, we didn't get something. We just kind of go with the flow because we assume it'll come together in the middle or at the end of the scene, or maybe later in the movie. But with reading, sometimes we'll read one sentence and we'll say, hold on, I didn't understand it, let me go back. We should never go back after just one sentence, although I would recommend going back if you've read an entire paragraph and you're lost, then it is a good idea to go back. So this habit of regression is something we really need to work on. We need to improve our concentration, and we'll talk about how to do that. Now this last habit is the hardest habit to break. And it's also a habit that really keeps people from making improvements in their reading speed. Do you remember when you were first learning how to read, the teacher probably had you get up in front of class and say the words out loud? So most of us were initially taught to read out loud, but after a certain point in time, your teacher didn't want you reading out loud because it's annoying when you have a bunch of little kids in a room and they're all saying the words out loud. So what does your teacher tell you to do? Your teacher tells you to say the words silently in your head. So we start doing this when we're young, and it kind of works out for us, and we continue doing it to this day. Most readers say the words in their head as they read. You probably notice yourself when you read, you say each and every single word. And this is a problem. Now that's not to say that there's something wrong with being taught to read this way. Nothing's wrong with teaching a student to read this way when they're young. But as you get older, around the age of 12, you have about 90% of your basic reading vocabulary. The other 10% is going to come from whatever your specialty is, if you go into law, medicine, or any other field. Now since you have your basic reading vocabulary, you don't have to say the word in order to understand what it means. For example, when you see a stop sign, do you say stop? Most people see a stop sign and they just understand that it says stop. You don't have to actually say stop in order to understand that it's a stop sign. But since we were taught to say each and every single word in our head, we feel like we have to do this in order to understand each and every single word. And we don't have to do this. Now let's do a quick little experiment. We want to find out how fast do we read out loud versus when we normally read in our head, and we want to compare the score. So what you're going to do is take out something that you want to read, and we're going to read for 1 minute. But you have to be reading out loud. Now once you have your reading material ready, go ahead and press the continue button, and the timer will start for 1 minute. Okay, now that you've read for 1 minute out loud, let's calculate how fast you read. You can do that by counting the number of lines that you read and multiplying it by the average number of words per line. Once you have that number, go ahead and compare it to one of your earlier scores, and you'll probably notice that it's around the same range. Most people, when they do this little exercise, they find that their average reading speed when they normally read is about the same as when they read out loud. Now yours might be a little faster or a little slower. If you read out loud a little more slowly, it could be because when you read out loud, maybe you read it like a story and you pause on periods and commas and things like that. If you read out loud a little faster than you normally do, it could be because when you read out loud, most people don't go back, and usually people go back when they're reading inside their head. But regardless if you were faster or slower, you probably were reading very close to what you normally read. Now think about this for a second. If you're saying each and every single word in your head as you're reading, doesn't that mean you can only read as fast as you talk? Is there a limit to how fast you can talk? Absolutely. Most people can't talk beyond the range of 350 words per minute. Now you may remember in an earlier lesson, we examined how fast the average person reads, and the average person reads 150 to 250 words per minute. Guess what the average talking speed is? The average person talks 150 to 250 words per minute. It's exactly the same as the reading speed. And it's no coincidence. We basically read as fast as we can talk. Now remember a little earlier I told you after the age of 12 most people kind of top out on their reading speed? This is the main reason why. Eventually, as we get older and we start reading more and more, eventually we hit our limit, and our limit is as fast as we can talk. So if we continue to read this way, in this kind of a system, then we're only going to go as fast as we can talk, and that's as fast as we'll ever go. We don't want to read as fast as we can talk, we want to read as fast as we can think. Now, I've been talking about this habit for a long time now, and I have yet to give you the actual name of it. The name of this habit is called auditory reassurance. It's just a fancy word for you're saying the words in your head. Another name for this reading habit is called subvocalization. You're subvocalizing the words that you're reading, or you're reassuring yourself that you understand something by actually saying it in your head. And as I mentioned before, you don't have to say every single word on the page in your head in order to understand those words. So in this lesson, we've covered 3 old reading habits that absolutely need to be changed if we want to start reading faster, comprehending more, and remembering more. The first habit was fixation. We want to stop focusing on each and every single word, and instead we want to be focusing on groups of words. The second habit was regression. We don't want to be going back constantly, so we need to improve our focus. And auditory reassurance, we don't want to be saying every single word in our head as we read. So these are some habits we're going to be working on in the coming lessons.